And everybody. Last week, Jared Kushner went on the pro-Trump outlet Fox TV and declared great success story in dealing with coronavirus. He said this on the day that the U.S. death toll passed 60,000. I wanted to talk to you today about that great success story. I wanted to tell you part of it. A tale of incompetence, a tale of ego, a tale of nepotism, corruption. I wanted to talk to you about, amidst a black comedy, a tale with deadly consequences, including for those on the front line in the United States of dealing with coronavirus and the patients who they tried to save, but who may have died because of this supposed great success story. This is the great success story of Jared Kushner's Quack volunteers. For 2 months, between January and March, Donald Trump blocked any effective action to deal with coronavirus. He denied it. He called his officials alarmist. He refused to authorize agencies to coordinate, to work between themselves, and to work with states. Finally, in mid-March, the White House Coronavirus Task Force, with real medical advisors, with real experts, persuaded Trump that something needed to be done. In fact, the stories started to persuade Trump. The stories that as coronavirus was spreading, states did not have life-saving ventilators, did not have the equipment to protect their medical staff. And so Trump authorized an attempt to gather quickly this equipment. But he did not go to the Federal Emergency Management Administration. He did not go to the Department of Health and Human Services. He did not go to any other agency with the logistical expertise, the expertise in procurement. Instead, he turned to his son-in-law, Jared Kushner. Now, Jared Kushner himself has no experience in public health. He has no experience in logistics and procurement. He has made his fortune off of his family's money and by speculating in real estate. But he is Donald Trump's son-in-law, and he is, in his own mind, the can-do guy, the guy that can make deals happen. After all, Jared Kushner is the Trump administration's envoy to the Middle East, who has been declaring that he will achieve a deal of the century, which of course has not materialized. He is the can-do guy who has met Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, who has met other world leaders, who has posed with them, and who has been played by them, by China, by Saudi Arabia, by the United Arab Emirates, and by other countries who, according to U.S. intelligence, realize to get the Trump administration to bend your way, take advantage of the naive Mr. Kushner. But he's a can-do guy, right? So this can-do guy, Jared Kushner, did not go to the Federal Emergency Management Administration or Health and Human Services or any other body which has expertise in healthcare provision. He went to his friends. He went to those he knew from the New York financial investment community, the speculators, the hedge fund folks, the guys that wheel and deal in money. He went to folks he knew from university, and he brought them together, most of them in their 20s. Names like Goldman Sachs, Google, Stanford on their resumes. People who effectively said, Jared, I can do this, even if I never have actually worked in the area that you're asking me to take on now. Now, these volunteers all of a sudden showed up in Washington, and they had meetings that were chaired by Jared. And of course, the friends and associates of Jared did not go to the established medical suppliers, did not go to the established vendors, did not go to others in government to talk about how to organize this effort. Instead, the friends and associates of Jared went to their friends and associates. They went to those who they had made contacts with, who maybe they had partied with, who they had had drinks with, and said, guess what I'm working on? Maybe you have an idea about how we can get this protective equipment. This entire effort was headed up not by a long-term government staff member, someone experienced for decades in dealing with disasters, say after hurricanes, say with Ebola, say with HIV/AIDS. It was not headed up by someone with decades of experience from the industry. It was headed up by a woman named Rachel Beitel. Rachel, who graduated from Princeton in 2014, and now 6 years later, in the middle of a pandemic, was going to organize the federal government's sudden supply rescue. Oh, she had something else on her resume as well. She had been at the U.S. Agency for International Development, and she had been a White House assistant to Melania Trump. Now, Rachel Beitel went to the friends and associates and contacts of Jared Kushner and said, I want you to prioritize the leads that come from those who have good political connections. Not the established medical suppliers, not the established firms that have been dealing with disasters, but from the politically connected. So who were these politically connected who began to give leads to this Quack volunteer force? Well, there's Judge Jeanine. Now, if you haven't seen Judge Jeanine, she's got a program on Fox TV. Donald Trump likes it very much. Judge Jeanine likes to shout a lot about how Donald Trump is the best thing that America ever had, and anyone who criticizes him, dangerous lefty. Well, Judge Jeanine, although she has no experience in dealing with healthcare, she sent messages repeatedly to Jared Kushner's force and said, I want 100,000 masks to this hospital that I like very much. She did it day after day after day, trying to make sure, in other words, that masks were distributed not according to where people were dying, according to where there were the greatest shortages, but because of a hospital that she liked. Let's talk about Charlie Kirk. Now, Charlie Kirk is, he's a very loud person on social media. He became noticed by the Trump people on social media. He helped organize something called Turning Point, which is a group of equally loud university people that like to show up and declare that Donald Trump is absolutely brilliant, and on occasion have been addressed by the president. Charlie Kirk's social media posts show no expertise. Indeed, most of them are actually disinformation or flat out lies. But Charlie, very loudly, was someone who could be picked up by Jared Kushner's Quack volunteer force to try to organize medical supplies. Let's talk about, for example, a dentist from Pennsylvania, Albert Hazuri. Now, his credentials were is that he is quite often at Donald Trump's resort at Mar-a-Lago in Florida. And so when he found out about, or maybe was contacted about this initiative, he kept bombarding government officials and Kushner's team to buy from his friends. Friends that he knew in local medical surgeries, in local offices, who, whether or not they actually had expertise with coronavirus, well, Albert knew them. Let's talk in one particular case about an effort which took place to try to obtain ventilators. Ventilators from a contact who said that I can provide these to you immediately on an emergency basis, right? This contact, who got in touch with Kushner's force, was given $69 million. $69 million. His name? Yaron Oren Pais, an engineer in Silicon Valley. That $69 million he's given, we don't know what it provided, because not one of the more than 1,000 ventilators that he said would be on hand to help at this critical time, to save lives, ever made it to New York State. New York State officials are now trying to recover the money. There's no way that they will get those ventilators, even as their death toll nears 26,000. Let's talk about Tanya Goetz, who approached the volunteer task force and said, I can help you. I can arrange to get these supplies. Does she have expertise in logistics, in procurement, in healthcare? No. She was on The Apprentice, though. That's the reality TV show that helped save Donald Trump in the early 21st century when he was trying to recover from a series of bankruptcies. Oh, and she's co-chair of Women for Trump. There is more to this story, which you can read about in a New York Times article, which exposed it earlier this week. And there's more that is percolating on other sites, other tales of equipment that was promised but never delivered, of millions that was handed out to absolutely no avail, to no benefit. Well, to no benefit except to the friends and the contacts of Jared Kushner, and thus Donald Trump. First and foremost in this story is the devastation, the loss of life, the families ripped apart by coronavirus. But beyond it is the wider story that we dealt with for years. That Donald Trump, Jared Kushner, have always seen the US government as a family business, in the same way that other regimes in other countries like Syria have seen their governments as family businesses, where they can make money, boost their egos, fill out their resumes, make deals of the century. That family business has crippled American government over the past few years, but now it's happening in the time of coronavirus. And when a family business is not qualified, when a family business is not ready for the crisis that we face, having depleted the national emergency stockpile of necessary resources, having disbanded the pandemic task force in 2018, having disregarded the playbook and reports from previous pandemic exercises, when that family business is not qualified, well, this is the great success story. The US death toll from coronavirus has now passed 73,000. And models project that by June the 1st, more than 3,000 Americans will die each day. Stay safe and be decent to each other. Thanks for listening.